Today we'll be going over the Google Maps Iceberg. We'll be exploring all over the world, finding the unexplainable. Google has used cars and satellites to document almost the entire world. Everything but what is under the surface and in the ocean. This has led to the finding of missing aircrafts, unknown military bases, and possible giant creatures. This specific iceberg was created by myself. I chose some of the craziest and creepiest topics to create the darkest Google Maps iceberg. If you guys want to use this chart in any way, feel free to, just please give me some credit. Anyways, without any further ado, let's start looking at this iceberg. The sky. This is referring to a giant meteorite impact in northern Arizona in the desert. This is a 1 mile wide crater, and it is 500 feet deep. Just to put that into perspective, you could fit an entire pyramid inside of this thing, and still have room to spare. This is now basically some sort of park, so you can actually go there and buy tickets to view this massive crater in Arizona. But if you can't fly down there, you can just visit on Google Maps. And it is still very fascinating to see such a massive crater in the world. There's a bunch of craters all over the world, but this is one of the biggest that you guys can actually see on Google Maps. There's actually another one in Egypt that is much smaller, but it was one of the few craters that have been found that haven't been touched by man yet. Coke in South America. This takes place in Chile, where we have this giant Coca-Cola logo. It is said to be made of empty Coke bottles. I guess that is one way to recycle Coca-Cola bottles. It has 70,000 bottles in this logo, and this is 65,000 feet wide in the Mojave Desert. This is in Chile and was created to be so big that they wanted you to be able to see it from space, just in case space travel became a thing. Coke did this for their 100-year anniversary. Can't wait to see what they're gonna do for their next big anniversary. This probably cost a ton of money, and I couldn't imagine trying to create something like this from the ground. I imagine they had to have vehicles up in the air telling them that yes, it was spelled right. Apache Indian. This one's pretty straightforward. In Alberta, Canada, as you look through the hills, you'll see this. It is what appears to be an Apache Indian. It looks so realistic that it even has the feathers that they would wear. A lot of people theorize this being made by the Apache Indian tribe somehow, that or by aliens, but it is just too big to be created. It had to have been natural. Just to put things into perspective, its forehead alone is 225 meters. Giant rabbit. This is located in Italy and was created in 2005 by an art group called Gelatin. From what I can tell, according to Wikipedia, its entrails were supposed to be hanging out, possibly to give it some scary effect. Really not sure what they were going for, but it kind of just looks like the stuffing process was a bit messy. It was 200 feet in length and 20 feet tall on the sides. So you basically had to have a ladder just to get on top of this giant stuffed animal. Unfortunately, by the time 2016 came around, this giant rabbit was completely decomposed, considering it was in the elements for over 10 years. This is what it looks like now. Google Mars and Moon. There isn't anything too crazy about this topic, but just like there's a Google Earth, there's also a Google Mars and Moon. Here are a few of the creepy things that we found on Mars and Moon. On Google Mars, there's something that oddly resembles a face, very similar to the Apache Indian. This one isn't quite as detailed, but it still looks like a face. Probably just an accident, but that is what's creepy. There's no explanation. On Google Moon, we have this image that has been shared around. It looks like a geometric shape, which is why this is creepy. As you guys know, it's very rare that you see a geometric shape in nature. You never just go outside and see a naturally formed square rock, which is why seeing this geometric shape on the moon is kind of scary, and a lot of people assume that aliens created this. Blue hills. In Utah, there are these things that look like blue hills. With further investigating, they aren't actually hills at all. They're just lakes. These are actually potash evaporation ponds that create potassium chloride. This process gives these lakes a very crazy look, and hence the blue color. There's nothing too crazy going on here. It's just chemistry and humans making minerals. Airplane graveyard. Well, if you ever wondered where all the planes went after wars, here it is. The airplane graveyard in Tucson, Arizona. There are literally thousands of airplanes here. From first glance, you would assume it would probably be one of the largest Air Force bases ever, but it's actually just all old decommissioned planes that are most likely being saved for parts. A lot of these planes have been taken apart, probably to get parts out of them for newer planes, but there's also plenty that are still completely intact. Most of the time these air bases are blurred out, which is why this one is very special. And it's because it's just a place for decommissioned planes. They found this location because of the climate. It helps supposedly keep the planes from rusting and can keep these parts better for longer. Unfortunately, you cannot come here in real life, so it's gonna stick to Google Earth for you. UFO. If you guys get on Google Earth and you're looking at this straight up from above, it looks exactly like a UFO. This actually takes place in a Romanian forest, and some UFO hunter found this in 2017 and completely freaked out thinking that he found a real UFO on Google Maps. It looks identical to a UFO that you'd see in a drawing or cartoon, but if you go into 3D mode, you guys can kind of view it from an angle and you'll realize that it is just a building. It's actually just some sort of water facility that they try to dress up and make a lot cooler, and it oddly just looks like a UFO from above. Well, congratulations, you made it under the surface. That being said, let's look at Iraq Bloody Lake. This one's actually pretty interesting because it's pretty hard to explain a completely red river. This is something just like out of the Bible. It is literally a red river. From a glance, it's very unsettling to look at, and a lot of people would say that it's because of nearby houses for animals, but after the research that I've done, it just seems to be some sort of algae that is growing in this body of water that gives it a red appearance, especially when you're viewing it from Google Earth. So, as scary as it seems, it's actually just still an unpleasant body of water to be in, most likely. Military bases. There are military bases all over the country, and not just that, but all over the world. And a lot of them, like I was talking about earlier, are blurred out or even just blacked out. Some of them have even just white blocks over them so you cannot see inside of them so that they stay secret. But some of them are left completely open for you to view. But then there's this Chinese military base. It is almost all visible, besides these two tiny slivers on the sides of this island. It's very odd the way that it was blurred out, which is why it makes it so creepy. What is going on this island? I feel like if the island was just completely blurred out, it would be less creepy than just blurring out these two areas. China has been known to be very secretive, especially with the US, but it's just odd how they went about blurring this island. Girl. Somebody found this in 2009, and obviously it was very concerning when they saw what appears to be a body on the ground on their street. This took place on Middle Road. This is what the person came across, and it just appears to be a body laying face down on the ground, missing its shoes. A year later, this was debunked when the girl came out with the story and admitted it was all just a joke. She was hanging out with her friend and probably just did this as a dare or tried to be funny, but it caused a lot of ruckus in their neighborhood and a lot of people weren't too happy with it. Not a happy ending. This was found in a creek in the Bahamas. This was reported by Aaron Flynn, but basically they found a car in a body of water sunk to the very bottom. As of right now, there's no great leads to explain what's actually happening here, but usually these scenarios are involved with missing person cases. Last time I heard a story like this, they found somebody in the car and they were missing for months. I assume this is still being investigated. That or it just turned out to be someone trying to get rid of a car. We're really not too sure what happened here. We have now made it to the very middle of this iceberg. Things are going to start becoming slightly more dark as the light from above becomes dim. Cambodia plane crash. This is referring to the Malaysian airline that went missing in 2014. Flight 370 had 277 people aboard and 12 crew members. The plane went off radar and we never heard of it again, but someone was digging around on Google Earth and found this. It's a plane in the middle of the Cambodia jungle. A lot of people say that they think this is the flight. This is the missing airline that disappeared in 2014. This hasn't been proven or debunked yet, but it's just a theory. But either way, it's a random airplane in the middle of a jungle. Something that should just not be there. China secret base. There are several that we could look at for this, but we're going to be looking at this one, and a lot of people would associate this with China's version of Area 51. It is a very odd layout from above and looks very futuristic or like technology straight from outer space. A lot of people say that these structures look like a bunch of UFOs that have landed in China. The small circles seem to actually be some sort of building, but what isn't explainable is the bigger structure. It just looks like a giant UFO. Being that it is in China and a military base, there's really nothing we can go off here. It's all kept very secret. So what's going on here? Well, we're not too sure yet. Doc. This is on literally every iceberg, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Basically, this dock appears to be covered in blood or has some trail of blood, but it really just seems to be watermarks from a dog that probably jumped in the nearby body of water. If you look at this picture, somebody kind of analyzed it and showed you exactly what was standing there, so you guys can picture it. So now that you know it's just a guy and a dog, the scene suddenly becomes a whole lot less scary. Blurred house in Nancy. This topic is really, really dark. I can't even talk about this fully on YouTube, but basically it was a site of a kidnapper. A lot of really messed up stuff happened here, and I assume Google just blurred it so the perpetrator couldn't show it off as some sort of trophy. This one really ties into the black dots and blurred houses. This is basically just referring to this scenario, and then military bases that have just been blacked out. We also have this house that has been blurred out because of some creature that people thought was an alien. It's been covered in a lot of other iceberg topics, but yeah, this is another case of that happening. You've made it one step lower, one step away from the abyss. But for now, enjoy the darkness. Guy being chased on scooter. Now, this is an interesting one. I actually found this one myself on iFunny. It appears that the Google car chased this guy down and ran him off the road until he fell off his bike. You can literally watch this step by step of this guy running away and looking frantically back at the Google car. It is assumed that the Google car ran this guy off the road, but I highly doubt someone would decide to commit a crime with a 360-degree camera on their car at all times. UFO sightings. Here we have even more UFO sightings. There's tons of these all over Google Earth, but most of them are just caused by lighting phenomenons in clouds. For example, this is what a lens flare looks like, and this is a UFO sighting that someone reported. Looks familiar, right? Here are a few of the most interesting ones that I have found. They definitely are a sight to look at and look out of this world, but it's just a lens flare most likely. Zombies. This was something that I found on YouTube, and once again, there's not a lot of information to go off of here. It just appears to be some sort of crowd of people that oddly resembles a scene from The Walking Dead. I did find a little bit of information on this, and someone says that it's actually just a field that someone put a ton of mannequins in as a scarecrow. It sounds like this takes place in Finland or something, but like I said, it's very hard to find information on this because no one's actually talking about this. So yeah, that's kind of what makes this so creepy, is just the lack of information. Lets your mind kind of wonder, are these zombies? Kraken. So this is the supposed Kraken that was found on Google Earth, and this is what the fictional creature looks like. Now, it is hard to correlate this image with the Kraken. It just looks like a huge monster in the ocean, or a big object of some sort. The best information I found on this was actually on Bill's channel. His name's literally just Bill's channel. He had a research team help him try and debunk this, and they found that it was not actually the Kraken, but it was indeed a real image, and something really, really big was in the ocean. So honestly, this may have just gotten a lot creepier, because once again, it's kind of unknown what was actually happening here. Angel in Switzerland. There isn't exactly a clear explanation here, but a lot of people have talked about this on other icebergs. People just found this on Google Maps and they started making guesses like it was an angel or a demon taking someone from this world somewhere else. It's probably just some sort of glitch that, or a bird was flying through the air while the car was moving. It's very common to have images like this or have people disformed because of the movement of the Google car and them. The pictures get all put together and sometimes they just don't match the way they should. So who knows what this could have been. Could have just been somebody throwing something at the Google car or a bird. Unfortunately, if you look at this location now, it appears that Google has updated the information here, so it just looks normal. Welcome to the abyss. You're at the very bottom of the iceberg, just under it in its shadow. First, we're going to be looking at bin bodies. This was found in Chile again. In 2014. It looks pretty disturbing with no explanation, and it appears that they're just trash bins full of taped up bodies. They're also all in really weird positions that just don't make sense. It was said since they're duct taped that this was probably the cartel, but that seems to have been debunked, and this will probably make more sense in a second. It just so happens that this dumpster is right next to a clothing store, and that would explain this. These bodies could just be mannequins that they threw out, but if that's not it, then I would guess that there's an art studio nearby that they could have used these mannequins for. A lot of people use mannequins to draw art, so maybe that could have been it as well. There's even this one which appears to be sitting, which I think really proves that this is most likely just a mannequin that was staged to be sitting for the clothing store. Scarecrows in Bolivia. Now, when I was researching this video, not many of these topics were scary, but this topic gave me chills. When you look around these streets, you guys can see just mannequins or scarecrows hung up at a lot of light poles. It's almost every single street corner in this neighborhood, it appears, and it almost looks like bodies being hung. For the most part, these seem to translate to "we punish people who steal." This is probably a good way to scare people into behaving, and it sounds like there's a real problem of crime in this neighborhood. It's kind of scary when you guys look at this on Google Earth because the streets seem to be empty besides these mannequins or scarecrows tied up to these light poles. They're all very scary to look at, and it's kind of odd that they're created for humans instead of just keeping birds away from corn. If you guys look up any of these topics, this is the one to look up. If you guys come to these coordinates, check things out, and you guys will see how unsettling this actually is. It's kind of scary that this is how they have to resort to fighting the crime, and just makes me wonder how they even get them up there. Well, you made it through the scariest Google Maps iceberg. We just went over some of the scariest topics on Google Maps and did our best to explain the unexplainable. Some of these topics have been left open-ended, so it looks like you have some investigating to do. If you guys enjoyed this video, drop a like down below and consider subscribing for more iceberg videos like this one. So that is it for the Google Maps Iceberg.